The morning of my daughter Rachel's wedding was supposed to be one of the happiest days of my life. I had been waiting for this moment for so long, and as I sat in front of the mirror, applying the final touches to my makeup, I couldn't help but smile. This was it. My little girl, all grown up, was about to marry the love of her life, and I was going to be there to witness it. Rachel had always been my pride and joy. I had raised her on my own after her father passed away when she was just a little girl. Every milestone, every moment of joy and heartbreak, Rachel and I had gone through it all together. And now, here she was, about to embark on the next chapter of her life with the man she had chosen. I had watched their relationship grow, and I knew how deeply they loved each other. I couldn't have been happier for her. As the morning light streamed through the windows, I took a deep breath and tried to calm the nervous excitement bubbling inside me. The wedding was beautiful. It had been planned to perfection. The dress, the flowers, the venue, it was everything Rachel had dreamed of. And all of this was because of the love and support we had always given each other as a family. This was a celebration of that love. But in the back of my mind, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling I had been carrying for the past few weeks. There had been a distance between Rachel and me that I couldn't explain. She had seemed a little more distant than usual, a little less engaged with me during the wedding preparations. I had chalked it up to the stress of planning a wedding, of course. I knew how much pressure there was to make everything perfect. But a small part of me, a part I couldn't ignore, wondered if there was more to it. Rachel had always been independent, even as a child, but she had never been cold. Something had changed. I just didn't know what. Later that afternoon, as the wedding ceremony was about to begin, I arrived at the venue and felt the buzz of excitement all around me. Friends and family were mingling, the music was playing, and I could see the smile on Rachel's face as she spoke with the bridesmaids. But when she caught sight of me, her smile faltered for just a split second, and a flicker of something darker passed through her eyes. I couldn't place it, but it unsettled me. I shook it off. Maybe she's just nervous, I thought, just getting ready to walk down the aisle. I gave her a warm smile and tried to brush off my unease. But as I approached, she pulled me aside, away from the noise of the reception. Her expression was unreadable, a mix of anxiety and something I couldn't quite put my finger on. "Mum, can we talk for a minute?" she asked, her voice almost too calm. I nodded, worried about what she was about to say. "Of course, sweetheart. What's on your mind?" We moved to a quieter corner of the venue, and she immediately turned to face me, her gaze intense. "I need to ask you something. Something important." I looked at her, puzzled. "Of course. What is it?" Rachel took a deep breath and looked around as if making sure no one else could hear. Then, without further hesitation, she blurted out the question that I never, in a million years, thought I would hear coming from her. "Mom, I want you to give me the house." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I stood there, frozen for a moment, unable to comprehend what she had just said. "What?" I finally managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. "What do you mean? Give you the house?" She looked at me, her eyes hardening, but there was a coldness there now that I didn't recognize. "I mean exactly that, Mom. I want you to sell the house to me. Mark and I are ready to start our own life together, and we need a place. You don't need all that space anymore. It's too much for you. We've talked about it, and we think it's time for you to move on." I stared at her, feeling the blood drain from my face. My heart pounded in my chest. This can't be happening. The house, the home where Greg and I had raised her, where we'd built our lives together, was no longer my home. How could she ask me to give it up? How could she tell me to leave? "Rachel, I began, but she cut me off, her tone growing more insistent. Mom, it's not just about space. It's about moving on. You can't keep living in that house. You're just holding on to the past, and I think you know that. I need you to let go. I need you to help us start our life. I felt my chest tighten and my breathing grew shallow. Let go? I had worked so hard to build that life. I had poured everything into that home. It wasn't just bricks and mortar to me. It was where I had spent my happiest moments with Greg, where we'd raised Rachel, where she had grown from a little girl into the woman standing in front of me now. You can't be serious, Rachel, I said, my voice trembling. This house is my home. It's where I've lived for years. I can't just give it to you. I won't. She looked at me as if I were a child throwing a tantrum. It's not like you're going to be homeless. We'll let you live there for a little while. But you need to start making plans to move out. It's time, Mom. Tears welled up in my eyes and I couldn't hold them back any longer. Why, Rachel? Why would you ask me to do this? After everything. This house. It's where your father and I know, she snapped, her voice sharp now. And that's exactly why you need to let go. You're not moving forward. You're stuck and we need to start our lives. I want you to help us build our future, not keep clinging to the past. The words were so cold, so cutting, that I couldn't even respond. I felt like I had been hit with a sledgehammer. The realization washed over me in waves. My daughter doesn't need me the way I thought she did. The house, the life I had fought for, was no longer a part of her future. Rachel, please. This is where I belong. Where I've belonged for so many years, I said, my voice breaking. You can't just take that from me. But it was clear she had already made up her mind. I think it's what's best for both of us, Mom. You need to let go of the house. We're not going to change our minds about this. You can stay there for a little while, but we need it to be ours eventually. I stood there, shaking, not knowing how to respond. I felt like I was losing her, losing everything I had ever known in that one moment. The wedding, which was supposed to be the happiest day of her life, had turned into the moment I realized that my daughter had moved on without me. She didn't need me in the same way anymore, and the thought of that was like a knife to my heart. Wedding day came and went. I stood there, watching her walk down the aisle in her beautiful dress, her face glowing with excitement and happiness. But inside, I felt empty. All I could think about was what had just happened, what she had just asked of me. And as she joined her new husband at the altar, the pain of that moment, the sting of betrayal, was almost too much to bear. As Rachel exchanged vows with Mark, I couldn't help but wonder if this day would be remembered not just as the beginning of her new life, but as the moment when I was no longer needed, when I was cast aside for the sake of their new life together. My heart ached, and the tears threatened to come again. But I held them back. I had to. I had to show Rachel that I could be strong. I had to be strong for myself. That deep down, I knew things would never be the same between us again. The house, the memories, everything I had known, I had to let go. It wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about the way she had made me feel. I wasn't the mother she needed anymore. I was just someone she wanted to push aside. And with that, I stood there, watching my daughter marry the man she loved, feeling the weight of her rejection pressing down on me like 1,000 pounds. Would I ever get my daughter back? Or was this the end of a chapter I wasn't ready to close? After Rachel's shocking request the night before her wedding, everything felt surreal. I spent the night wide awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind spinning. The wedding day should have been a time for joy, for celebrating my daughter's new chapter in life, but it had instead left me shattered. My heart was heavy, and the emotional weight felt unbearable. I had just been asked to give up everything that meant something to me. The house, the memories, my sense of stability. How could she ask that of me? How could my only daughter, the one I had spent so many years nurturing and raising, push me away like this? The day of the wedding arrived, and I went through the motions, trying to put on a brave face. I helped Rachel get ready, watched as she transformed into a beautiful bride, and smiled through the ceremony as she married Mark. But as I stood there, seeing her in the arms of her new husband, something inside me cracked. My little girl was no longer mine. I had always believed we had a strong bond, but now it felt like she had left me behind without a second thought. The request and the way she had made it had left a deep wound in my heart. I didn't know how to fix it. When the reception came, I tried to stay composed. I danced with friends, laughed with family, but everything felt hollow. The joy of the day had been stolen from me, and it wasn't just because of the house. It was because I was slowly realizing that Rachel didn't need me anymore. I was no longer the center of her world. I wasn't the first person she turned to for advice, for support. She had grown up and moved on, and I didn't know how to come to terms with that. But Rachel's words echoed in my mind, haunting me. Long after the wedding, "Mum, it's time for you to give me the house. You don't need all that space anymore. It's time for you to let go." It was as though she had ripped out a part of me. The house wasn't just 4 walls and a roof. It was where I had spent my life with Greg. It was where Rachel had grown up, where we had spent countless hours laughing, arguing, and loving. It was where we had celebrated birthdays, anniversaries, and holidays. It was more than just a property, it was my identity, my foundation. And now, Rachel wanted to take that from me. How could I let go of something so precious? How could I just give it up, as though it were nothing more than a burden? The days following the wedding were a blur. I kept to myself, retreating into the silence of my empty house. I couldn't bring myself to go over to Rachel's house. I couldn't face her yet, not after what had happened. I wasn't sure if I would ever be able to see her the same way again. The pain from her words, the coldness in her voice was too fresh, but the reality of the situation was undeniable. Rachel had made her decision. She had asked for the house, and she expected me to comply. She and Mark were ready to start their lives together, and I was no longer a part of that picture. They needed the house to build their future, and I was in the way. Was I being selfish? I asked myself. Was I holding on to something that wasn't mine to keep? One evening, I sat in the living room, alone, surrounded by the empty space. I ran my fingers over the back of the couch, feeling the years of wear, the imprint of memories. I couldn't deny that the house was becoming too much for me. The upkeep was harder with each passing day, the large rooms too quiet, too empty. Greg's absence had left a void that no amount of cleaning or rearranging could fill. Maybe Rachel was right. Maybe it was time for me to let go. But letting go felt like an insurmountable mountain. The house was everything. It was the place where Greg and I had dreamed our dreams, where we had built our family, where Rachel had learned to walk, to talk, to love. It was the place where I had sat by Greg's side during the good and the bad. I couldn't just give it up without a fight. I couldn't just hand it over to Rachel without asking for more time, for more understanding. I decided to confront Rachel. I wasn't ready to give in, but I had to try to talk to her. I needed her to understand how much the house meant to me. I needed her to understand that it wasn't just about space. It was about the life I had built, the memories I had created. The next weekend, I called her and asked if we could meet. I knew it was going to be difficult, but I had to do it. I had to ask her why she had made this decision, why she thought it was okay to ask for the house so bluntly. I needed to hear her side, and I needed to share mine. When I arrived at Rachel's house, I felt a knot form in my stomach. She greeted me with a polite smile, but I could see the tension in her eyes. It was clear that things between us weren't the same anymore. I could feel the distance between us, like an invisible wall had gone up, and I didn't know how to tear it down. We sat in her living room, the silence between us thick with unspoken words. Finally, I broke the silence. "Rachel, I don't know how to start," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said about giving you the house, and I just don't understand. Why would you ask me to give it up like that?" Rachel looked at me, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Mom, I've already explained. Mark and I need this house. It's too much for you. You've talked about downsizing for years. We're ready to start our lives, and we can't do that with you living here. It's time for you to move on." "But this house is mine," I said, my voice rising slightly. "It's where I've lived for so long. It's where I've made my life. I understand that you want it, but I can't just let it go." "You don't get to make that decision for me." Rachel sighed, exasperated. "Mum, this isn't just about the house. It's about you moving forward. You're stuck in the past, holding on to something that's too big, too empty for you now. We're trying to help you. We're trying to make things easier for you." I shook my head, the tears threatening to spill over. "You don't understand," I whispered, barely able to speak. "I'm not ready to let go of everything. I'm not ready to let go of the memories. You can't just take this from me. It's all I have left of Greg." Rachel's expression softened for a moment, but her words were still sharp. "I know it's hard, Mom, but you have to understand. We need this house. We're not trying to hurt you, but you're not going to live here forever. You need to let go of the past and let us have our future." Her words stung more than I had expected. "You don't get to decide when I let go, Rachel," I said, my voice trembling with emotion. "This house is part of me, part of everything I've known. And now you're asking me to give it up without understanding how much it means to me." Rachel was silent for a moment, and then she stood up, her face hardening again. "I'm sorry you feel that way, Mom," she said quietly. "But I think you'll come around. You need to. We can't keep living in this limbo forever. It's time for you to move on." With that, she turned and walked away, leaving me standing there, feeling the full weight of her rejection. I had never imagined that this moment would come, the moment when my daughter would push me away, when she would tell me that I no longer mattered in the way I thought I did. I sat there for a long time, the silence overwhelming, and I realized that Rachel wasn't just asking for the house. She was asking me to let go of everything, the past, the memories, the life I had built. And no matter how much I loved her, I wasn't sure I could do that. The road ahead seemed uncertain. The house was going to be sold, whether I was ready or not. But I didn't know if I would ever truly be ready to let go of everything I had worked so hard for. The days after my confrontation with Rachel was some of the hardest I'd ever lived through. I had never expected that asking me to give up my home would have such a profound impact on our relationship, that now I was forced to face the reality. That Rachel wasn't just asking for the house, she was asking me to release my entire past, my identity, my connection to Greg, and ultimately, to her. The aftermath of that conversation left me feeling hollow. I was grieving in ways I hadn't anticipated. It wasn't just the loss of the house, though that was painful enough. It was the realization that Rachel and I were no longer the same. The bond we once had, the closeness we shared, was slipping away. She had changed, and so had I. I spent the next few days and a days walking through the empty rooms of the house that had once felt so full. Every corner, every piece of furniture seemed to hold a memory of Greg. The kitchen, where we had shared countless meals. The living room, where we had sat together during holidays. The backyard, where we had laughed and made plans for the future. Now all of it felt like a cruel reminder of what I was losing. Rachel had made her position clear, but I couldn't fathom just handing the house over to her, not like this. It was more than just a building. It was a symbol of my life with Greg, of our family, of everything I had worked for. And yet, as I looked around, I began to see how impractical it had become. The house was too big for me to manage on my own. The upkeep was becoming too much, and I knew that I wasn't as strong as I once was. The silence in the house seemed to echo louder with every passing day. I knew that Rachel was right about one thing. I needed to downsize, but I wasn't ready to give up the house, not yet. I needed more time to come to terms with everything. But Rachel's impatience was growing, and the pressure from her and Mark was mounting. I could feel it, like a weight pressing on my chest. One evening, about a week after our conversation, I received a call from Rachel. I was reluctant to answer, unsure of what to expect. When I picked up, her voice was sharp, no longer the warm, loving tone I had known for so many years. "Mom," she said, her voice cold, "I need to know when you're going to make a decision about the house. Mark and I can't keep waiting. We've already started looking at places, and we need you to let go. This is about our future." I closed my eyes, trying to gather my thoughts before responding. "Rachel, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I'm ready to let go of everything. This house, this is where your father and I built our life. It's where you grew up. It's not just a property to me. It's home." She didn't hesitate in responding. "I understand that it's hard, but we need to start our life. We can't keep living in this limbo. It's not healthy for any of us. You need to make a decision, Mom. I've been patient, but I can't keep waiting for you to come to terms with this." Her words struck me like a blow to the chest. I hadn't realized just how much pressure she was under to start her life with Mark, to establish their future. But in the process, it felt like she was asking me to completely step aside. I had always believed that our bond as mother and daughter would last, that we would always have each other's backs. But now, everything felt so fractured. The anger and frustration built up inside me that I didn't want to lash out. I had already said everything I needed to say, and I could feel the gulf between us widening. Rachel was no longer the little girl who had relied on me, who needed me. She was an adult, with her own life, her own plans. And in a way, I had to accept that. "I'll start looking for a place," I said softly, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. "But I'm not ready to let go of this house yet. I need more time." There was a pause, and when Rachel spoke again, her voice softened just a little. "Okay, Mom, but please, don't take too long. I want you to be happy. I want you to have a future too. But I can't keep waiting forever." As the call ended, I felt a wave of exhaustion wash over me. It wasn't just physical, it was emotional. I felt drained, like every ounce of energy I had was being consumed by this struggle. Rachel and I had been so close once, but now it felt like we were two strangers standing on opposite sides of an enormous divide. The following weeks were filled with real estate agents, house viewings, and endless packing. I began the process of sorting through the belongings that had accumulated in the house over the years. It was a painstaking process, one that left me both nostalgic and heartbroken. Every photo, every piece of furniture, every item held memories of Greg and of the family we had been. I had no idea where I would end up, but it felt like every step I took further from this house was another step away from the past, from the life I had shared with Greg. Then came the day when the house was officially put on the market. I stood in the kitchen, staring out the window at the backyard where Greg and I had spent so many afternoons. I could still see his smile, still hear his laughter in the air. The house had been our dream, a place where we had envisioned growing old together. And now, here I was, preparing to give it up, to hand it over to someone else. I felt a mix of sadness, guilt, and resignation. Rachel had pushed me to make this decision, but a part of me knew it was inevitable. I wasn't going to stay here forever. But I wasn't ready to move on, not in the way that she wanted me to. A few days after the sale was finalized, Rachel and Mark invited me over for dinner to discuss the next steps. They were excited about the future, but I could see the unspoken tension between us. I was happy for them, truly, but I wasn't sure if I was ready to let go of the past. They had already started making plans to renovate the house, to turn it into their home, and I felt like an intruder, like I was already being erased from the picture. Dinner was polite, but strained. I could feel the gap between us, the invisible wall that had been built over the past few months. Rachel and Mark were starting their life, and I was simply a bystander, watching them take control of everything. Finally, I couldn't stay silent any longer. "Rachel, I just need to say something," I began, my voice wavering. "I'm not ready for all of this. I know you need the house, and I know it's time for me to move on, but I still don't know if I'm ready. I thought I'd have more time to come to terms with it. And maybe I've been selfish, but this was my life with Greg. And now, it feels like I'm losing him all over again." Rachel's face softened for a moment, and Mark placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Mum," she said, her voice quiet, "I know this is hard, and I never wanted to hurt you. I just wanted us to start our life together. But I understand. I really do." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to scream, to tell her how much pain I was in, but I also knew that she had her own dreams, her own future to build. This wasn't just about me. It was about both of us. "I'll find a place soon," I said, my voice trembling. "But I just need you to know that. I'm still grieving, and still letting go of the life I thought I had. I just need time." Rachel nodded. "I understand, Mum. Take all the time you need." And for the first time in weeks, I felt like we had taken a small step toward understanding. I wasn't sure what the future held for us, but I knew that the road ahead would be difficult. I had lost the house, but I still had my daughter at least. I hoped I did, as I left their house that night. I realized that moving on wasn't just about selling the house. It was about finding a way to rebuild my life. It wasn't easy, and it wouldn't be quick, but I was ready to start the next chapter, even if it meant doing it without the home that had once been my everything.